What happens when the only path to freedom requires you to, I don't know, sacrifice your core self,
Right.
to bind your will to this ancient destructive force and embrace the very monster you were trying to escape?
That's not just a puzzle. It's the brutal immediate reality for Tizana, who's at the absolute heart of our deep dive today.
It's the ultimate high-stakes gamble.
It really is. It's a Faustian bargain where the currency isn't just your soul, but the survival of, well, of an entire people.
So today we are plunging headfirst into Carissa Broadbent's Daughter of No Worlds.
The first book in the War of Lost Hearts series, and it's a world where salvation comes with a literal ironclad and very bloody cost.
Okay, so let's unpack this journey for you. We got a fantastic collection of source material to work from, detailing the harsh political landscapes, the brutal personal histories,
And the really intricate dualistic magic systems that define this entire universe. We're going to break down how all of these elements just collide.
the world is immediately defined by this profound dichotomy.
It is. On one side, you've got Threl. It's a land where slavery is institutionalized, it's brutal, and it's practiced by these powerful, calculating lords like Asmaris Mikov.
A society built purely on possession and destruction.
Exactly. And then across the sea, you have Ara. It's supposedly this politically neutral sanctuary, home to the powerful twin orders of magic.
Supposedly neutral, but they hold all the cards, all the power.
Of course.
So R is meant to be the answer, the shining city on a hill. But Tizana learns very quickly that even a sanctuary demands a huge personal sacrifice.
And it's usually a sacrifice that benefits the order.
Always. So our mission today is to track her desperate, bloody journey. First, we need to understand how the magic of Era actually works, this dualistic system.
Then we have to uncover the deep, dark, and frankly traumatizing history that binds her to her very reluctant mentor.
And finally, we'll get into the emotional and ethical implications of the pact she makes, the deal that turns her into a weapon for hire.
This is a story where the price of power, it's not measured in coin. It's measured in the complete surrender of control.
To really get a grasp on the relentless, almost suicidal drive that pushes Tizana through this entire story, have to start where she started.
In Threl, specifically at Asmaris Mikov's sprawling estate. She grew up there, enslaved, and marked from the beginning as a fragmented girl.
And that term fragmented is so critical. It defines her existence as like a flaw in a society that treats people like a commodity.
Yeah, she's Voltaine. That's the people who are capable of internal magic, and they're typically identifiable by, albino skin, white hair.
But Tizan isn't pure. She has these visible, non-albino, trait-stand skin patches, brown hair.
Which means in Threl, it lessened her market value as a slave. But later in Ara, it also diminishes her standing among the pure Valtine wielders in the Order of Midnight.
She's an outsider everywhere.
Everywhere she goes.
And what she does to survive is just. It's almost miraculous. She spends years using her performance skills, her dancing, to survive that horrific environment.
And more importantly, to save up. Our sources really emphasize her desperation here. She starts by offering 50 silver pieces for her freedom.
Which is Maris just cruelly refuses. He tells her, you are worth far more than that.
And that refusal, it's such a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
Oh, absolutely.
He wasn't complimenting her by saying she was worth more. He was tightening the chains. He was making her believe her only value was in his continued ownership of her.
So years later, she scrapes together 1,000 gold pieces. A massive, almost impossible sum.
And the inflation of that price, just think about it, from 50 silver to 1,000 gold. It shows you the trap he's locked her in. He just kept raising the stakes until it seemed financially impossible for her to ever get out.
And then we get to the climax of her time in Threl, and it is just horrifying.
She finally confronts the sick, ultimate truth about Asmaris. That his twisted affection for her wasn't love or even just ownership.
It was pure possessiveness.
Yeah.
His entire philosophy was just possess or destroy.
Exactly. If she wouldn't be possessed, if she tried to assert her own personhood and buy her freedom, he would destroy her.
The sources are very graphic about the violence. The whipping lash by agonizing lash.
Her back is just covered in these deep, ferocious gouges, some still bleeding, others stitched together like a hideous patchwork quilt. That scarring is the permanent mark of her enslavement.
It's a constant source of her physical pain throughout the whole journey.
And it's so important for you to understand, Tizana did not kill him.
No.
Asmaris had nearly beaten her to death. She was on the brink of just surrendering. It was Cyril, her close friend and a fellow slave, who intervened.
He plunged his sword into Asmaris's chest, The auditory detail in the source is striking. A crunch of bone and a squelch of flesh.
That sound instantly reminded Tisana how soft and breakable a human body really is, even a monster like Ismaris.
And that is the moment everything pivots.
Injured, bleeding, fleeing for her life, she has to rely on this constant, almost ritualistic mantra during her frantic journey.
My name is Tizana. I'm from Threll, friend of Zareth Aldris.
She's hanging on to those words like a talisman, isn't she? It's not just an affirmation of who she is.
No, it's a desperate connection to the only powerful person she knows, from Zareth Aldris, the Archcommandant.
The sources say she was barely conscious when she finally collapsed at the towers, just choking out that broken phrase.
It just highlights the sheer, overwhelming force of will that got her across that ocean, fueled by nothing but a name and the hope of freedom.
And this directly informs her primary motivation. She saw that Zareth Aldris, a high-ranking member of the Orders, could mingle with Threllian nobles like Ismaris on equal footing.
Why? Because Zareth had resources, support, political protection.
And most importantly, she had power. Tisan realizes power is, and this is a quote, "everything I needed to make my survival worth what it cost my family."
That is such a powerful articulation of her core belief.
It is.
Power isn't a luxury for her. It is a moral necessity. It's the only compensation for the loss of her family for her own slavery. She needs power to become something.
Something that can never be possessed or destroyed again.
So she arrives in Ara, drawn by these glistening glass towers, the impossibly tall silver tower of midnight and the gold tower of daybreak.
Ara, the supposed sanctuary, home of the twin orders, built on this principle of complementary magic.
We really need to be clear about what these orders represent, because the structure of the orders reflects the structure of the magic itself.
Okay, so the Order of Midnight. It's comprised of the Vultane people. They have that extreme appearance, albino skin, white hair, and they specialize in internal or thought magic.
Their silver tower is a pretty apt symbol for their subtle, often cold, internal focus. URSummary represents this order.
And then you have the Order of Daybreak, comprised of the Solari, who look like any other humans. They specialize in external magic.
Elemental forces, fire, earth, that sort of thing.
Right. Their gold tower suggests their more outward, physical, demonstrable power, and URSummary is their representative.
And Tizana, being a fragmented Vultane, is immediately this anomaly, an outsider trying to bridge this massive gap.
And her goal is not subtle. It is massive, immediate, and utterly political. She doesn't just crawl to them asking for healing or training.
No, she demands a negotiation. She immediately requests order protection and specifically asks for 20 wielders.
An army unit.
An army unit.
Yeah.
She needs those resources to negotiate or, let's be honest, force the freedom of the slaves still trapped in Threll.
She's not just seeking personal freedom. She's using her one life as leverage to start a war of liberation.
Which leads us to the non-negotiable wall she slams into the second she arrives. So Tizana's immediate demand for an army hits that wall. The Twin Order's absolute insistence on a mandatory 6-year apprenticeship.
For any new wielder, no exceptions.
And that wall is embodied by the deeply reluctant mentor they end up assigning her.
This 6-year hurdle, it's just non-negotiable in their system. But for Tizana, who's carrying the weight of thousands of enslaved people on her shoulders, 6 years is a death sentence.
She vehemently opposes it. Her people, she says, do not have 6 years for waiting for help.
The moral clock is ticking at a furious pace for her.
And because time is so critical, the orders have to find some kind of workaround, which leads to this deeply flawed assignment.
Yeah, the source material notes that there are no Valten in the Order of Midnight who are available to apprentices right now. So Nura, a high-ranking wielder, assigns Tisana to Maxentarius Farleone.
A Solary wielder and a total pariah.
He sees Tizana as this foreign nuisance, a tether the orders are using to drag him back into their system. His immediate resistance is it's palpable.
He flat out says, I won't bother. This doesn't even justify a response. You already know where I stand on involvement with the orders.
He's a man who fought his way out of their influence, and now they're using this desperate girl to yank him right back in.
I get that Max is reluctant, but why him? Why is he the only one available? What's in his history that makes him so undesirable that they just throw the fragmented girl at him knowing he'll hate it?
That's a great question, and it speaks volumes about the Order's cynical maneuvering. Max isn't just isolated, he's tainted.
Tainted how?
He is the wielder who destroyed the city of Sarlazai during the Ravini conflict. It was an act that won the war but shattered his life. He is a walking, talking, ethical dilemma.
Too powerful to ignore, but too traumatized to control.
Exactly. So by assigning him Tisana, who's a high-profile, politically sensitive apprentice, they make sure he's constantly monitored, they ensure his freedom remains conditional,
He can't just refuse.
or he risks being thrown into Ilizath the Order's maximum security prison.
The irony here is so thick. Tisana, a fragmented Valtane, naturally attuned to internal, shadowy, thought-based magic.
And she's forced to be trained by Max, the disaffected Solary Master, whose expertise is in external, physical, elemental magic.
This pairing immediately gets intense scrutiny from the traditionalists in the orders.
And that pairing, as you said, means we really have to understand the fundamental architecture of magic in this world. Internal versus external.
Yeah.
Mental versus physical.
Okay, let's deep dive into that. Valtane magic is described as fundamentally internal. We get a clear example with the Valtane healer, Willa.
She isn't imposing a physical force on you. She is talking to your body, encouraging it to heal itself from within. It's rooted in thoughts, shadows, the deep internal dialogue of the self.
This reliance on the internal world means Valtane wielders are incredibly sensitive to external ripples of emotion in other people.
They're like human seismographs for thought and feeling.
Which is a great power. It allows for subtle manipulation, mental intrusion, but, as Tisana discovers, it's also a profound weakness.
Especially when you're dealing with the raw, chaotic entity of Reishe, which thrives on rage.
Right. Now contrast that with Solary magic, purely external, focused on manipulating physical elements.
When Samarin, the Solary healer, works, he is physically moving flesh, patching it together, and melding it at a small level.
Max, as a Solary, is attuned to elements like fire and water, but his magic acts upon the physical world, not the mental one.
And Samarin's healing method, it's described as hurting much more than Willa's gentle internal encouragement.
Because it's a physical imposition, a physical change.
So the core insight here is that Max is tasked with imposing external, precise, solary structure onto Tiza's inherently chaotic internal Valtane nature. Her natural tendency is to feel and flow. His teaching is all about rigid, repeatable technique.
And Max immediately sees how amateurish her self-taught magic is. It's performance magic, designed to impress, not to be precise.
Right, when she conjures an illusionary flower for him, a common Valtane trick, he just dismisses it, shakes his head.
He says it's not the essence of this flower, but just what you think a flower looks like.
Yeah.
There's nothing real about that. It's too perfect, too symmetrical.
Too fake up close. And this relentless pursuit of technical perfection is Max's bizarre, twisted form of protection.
How do you mean?
He knows that as a fragmented wielder, Tizen will face intense scrutiny. So to survive the orders, she has to be technically flawless, able to knock their moon-obsessed rogues off with undeniable skill.
So his brutality is a way to make her unassailable.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the technical jargon we need to explain. Stratagrams. These are complex spell instructions, often drawn out.
The source describes them as being incredibly difficult, like tying a cow's head to its tail if you misuse them.
So why is a Solary teaching them to a Valtane?
Well, stratagrams are basically a blueprint for a complex spell. Because Solary magic is external and requires physical manipulation of energy, they rely on them way more often to direct magic for more complex spells.
Valtane wielders are more about the instantaneous nature of thought.
Right. But Max, the Solary, sees them as a structural tool, a way to impose that external precision onto Tisana's internal chaos. He's teaching her to engineer her magic, not just feel it.
And here's where the lesson turns into this profound emotional moment. Max designs a stratagram specifically for her.
Tisana sees them tattooed on another Valtane slave to cripple her power, so she fears them. But Max turns this tool of oppression into a lifeline.
He tells her about the custom-designed stratagram, saying, that one will bring you here.
It is the first clear, unconditional sign of his protective, though deeply reluctant commitment. It's a literal lifeline, a complex, coded spell ensuring that if she ever needs to escape, she can bypass all the Order's sanctioned travel methods and come straight back to him.
To his cottage. To his protection.
He's investing his own power and knowledge into her immediate survival, totally regardless of the Order's rules.
That protective investment from Max, it only really makes sense when we look at the immense dark shadow of his past.
It informs everything about him, his current isolation, his absolute disdain for the orders.
The background noise of the entire novel is the ongoing political instability in Ara. It's all centered on this young, tyrannical Queen Cesare and the recent brutal war against the Ravenni separatists.
From the Farleone family, Max's kin were connected to the Ravenni nobility, so when the war broke out, Max was placed in an impossible bind.
Which brings us to the Sarlazai betrayal, the defining trauma of Max's life, an event he absolutely refuses to speak about.
And here we have to talk about Nura, his former lover.
Nura, a high-ranking wielder completely dedicated to Ara, forced Max to use his terrifying, uncontrollable magic that lay dormant deep inside him to decimate the entire city of Sarlazai.
This act, using this unnatural amount of raw power, it won the crown their war, but it completely eviscerated Max. That's the quote from the source.
He was forced to unleash a level of power that it fundamentally broke him, morally and psychologically.
It was a required atrocity, sanctioned by the orders, but carried out by his hand.
And the cost didn't stop with Sarlazai. The trauma was immediately compounded by the calculated murder of his entire family.
7 siblings and his parents.
And the orders, wanting to suppress any dissent or sympathy for the Ravenni cause, they covered it up, called it an unfortunate wartime tragedy.
And they used Max's own past ties to the separatists as the justification.
This wasn't collateral damage, it was political execution.
Absolutely. And we see the horrific political weaponization of this event play out in the capital. Max and Tiziana witnessed the public execution of Lord Savoy.
And the queen, Cesare, who is clearly a child, she can't be older than 13, she uses the sacrifice of the Farleone family to justify her tyranny.
She stands there and tells Savoy, "I'm sure you heard the fate of the Farleone family. After everything he did for this country, he lost his kin to traitors like you, just as I did."
So Max, the man who was forced to destroy Sarlazai, has to stand there and listen to his family's murder be used as state propaganda.
It is a stunning display of political cruelty. The Queen's power is stabilized by Max's forced actions, and his family's fate is then used to terrify anyone who might dissent.
This is the root of his fierce isolation.
And his self-exile wasn't just grief, either. We learned the Sarlazai event led him down a path of self-destruction, years of drugs, wine, and aimless wandering.
Before he managed to crawl back to his secluded cottage.
But his isolation was fundamentally rooted in a blood pact of silence he made with the orders.
A blood pact.
That pact ensured he would keep the existence of Reshe, the magical creature at the heart of the Sarlazai destruction, a complete secret. He could never speak about what truly happened, why he was forced to act, or the price he paid.
So that pact is the anchor that chains him to his trauma. It prevents him from ever seeking justice or peace.
And it's so interesting how his refusal to talk about his trauma is perfectly mirrored by Tiziana's own profound grief.
Over her mother and lost family.
Right. Max eventually asks her about her family, and her response is just heartbreaking. She says the worst thing is to think that they are all buried somewhere in a hole with so many other slaves.
And I hate their deaths. But what I hate more is that there is no one left who remembers their lives.
That line, no one left who remembers their lives, it speaks to this universal human fear, the extinction of memory.
And Max, who is forced to bury the memory of his 7 siblings and parents, he responds with that devastating, insightful line. And who the hell are we to carry something so precious?
They're 2 profoundly damaged people, finding this strange, shared solace in not having to forget their dead loved ones entirely alone.
And we have to circle back to Nura for a moment to explore that necessary sacrifice. She justified forcing Max's hand because she saw an opportunity to win the war.
She states it so chillingly, "I did what I had to do, and I will carry that weight to my grave. There was only one thing I loved more than I loved him. Ara. Only Ara."
It showcases this dark utilitarian logic of her choice. She's not just an arbitrary villain.
No, she's a calculated patriot who put the good of her city, Ara, above her love for Max and his entire family. It's a chilling example of how self-justified sacrifice can lead to these monstrous yet somehow rationalized acts.
Okay, so here's where the paths of Max's traumatic past and Tiziana's desperate future just collide. The weapon itself, Reshe.
The orders sought Reshe for the war years ago, and now they want Tiziana to become its new host.
And Reshe is described as so much more than a magical artifact. It's a being of raw magic.
A primordial, almost elemental consciousness that is many times more powerful than anything a conventional wielder can conjure. And critically, It is selective about its hosts.
It chooses who it bonds with.
And it thrives on chaos, rage, and death.
And Riche has a history with Max. This weapon isn't just a force, it's a living entity with memory. When Tizana first senses it in her mind, it confirms the connection.
It whispers with this terrifying intimacy. I loved Max and Terrius very much.
That one line, it immediately establishes that her mentor, who fears this power above all else, is tied to it by affection as much as by trauma.
So Tisana, having learned Max's history and realizing the ultimate cruelty of the orders, she decides to stop being the desperate supplicant.
She seizes control. She transforms the negotiation with Zareth Aldris, the Archcommandant, into a strategic counteroffer.
Her demands are incredibly sharp. They show her intelligence and her, political maturity.
First, she demands 2 distinct trips to Threll, an immediate small mission to rescue Cyril and her friends.
And then later, a large promised army mission to liberate the rest of the slaves.
And her second, most crucial demand is all about Max. She demands the absolute and immediate release of Max Terrius Farleone from all Order contracts, pacts, or agreements.
Including the blood pact of silence he made years ago.
She's effectively buying his freedom with her own.
And the price she pays for this complex package. Tisana enters a blood pact with Zareth. This binds her fundamentally to the orders for the war's duration.
And critically, it involves accepting Riche's immediate forced integration into her body.
The source describes the contract as 3 pages that guarantee her friend's safety and 3 pages that sold me back into slavery.
We see the immediate, agonizing fallout through Max's eyes. When he gets back to the tower, he sees Nura's jacket, stained with Tisana's fresh blood.
He confronts Nura with this frantic, desperate growl, demanding, "Tell me that's not hers."
When Nura confirms the blood pact, Max realizes he's still trapped. Tisana sacrificed herself to free him, but in doing so, she created a new, unbreakable chain of responsibility.
His worst fears about her becoming a tool, just like he was, are confirmed in the most brutal way possible.
The terrifying nature of the power she's inherited is glimpsed almost immediately during a mission to Tarn.
Right, an island where Max and Samarin join her. Nora uses Riche-based abilities to attack Pathir Savoy, drowning him in his worst fears and memories. It's described as a living nightmare, but more real.
In Tiasum, with her inherent Voltaigne mind-sensing capabilities, she experiences the raw overflow of this psychic attack.
She realizes her specific type of magic makes her exceptionally vulnerable to Riche's mental chaos. The creature doesn't just wield power, it wields pain, fear, and internalized rage.
The central conflict comes to a head in a training scenario, a sparring session. Riche briefly takes full control of Tisana's body.
It lunges at Max with the specific murderous intent that the creature possesses.
And Max, refusing to accept that she's gone, he forces the confrontation. He yells at her, "Find something you can grab and don't let go."
This is the moment where his solary focus on precision and structure pays off against her Voltaigne chaos. Tisana, in this sheer moment of mental brilliance and desperation, realizes her mind is a complex web.
Not a contained room that Riche can just occupy.
Exactly. And she then describes the surgical precision of her victory. She crawled up the threads of my mind and dropped a razor across all of those infected threads.
She successfully severs Riche's immediate control.
The cost was immense. Screaming, physical pain, a broken wrist. But she achieved control through this radical internal act of self-mutilation. She excised the creature rather than just suppressing it.
And this demonstration of protective commitment from Tisana elicits a confession from Max.
Rooted in the trauma of that Tarn mission, he reveals his own counter-betrayal of the orders. When he fought in Tarn, he broke his blood pact of silence.
He used a powerful, forgotten magic, these cold, shimmering blue flames, a residual gift from Riche's forcible removal years earlier.
This detail is so critical. Max, who swore off his power, used the very magic that broke him because Tisana needed him.
He confessed that he used the blue flames because, despite all his reservations and all his trauma,
"You needed me." It shows their bond has now transcended his greatest fear and resurrected the very power that decimated Sarlasai.
all these immense stakes, they just converge in the final infiltration plan for Azin Mikov's grand party in Threll.
The mission to rescue Cyril and the other enslaved people. The team is Tisana, Max, Samarin, and 2 new players we need to highlight. The Sirazin.
Right, the Sirazin are crucial. They're specialized wielders who use this form of deep, silent magic that allows them to teleport the slaves out.
Bypassing the city's anti-stratogram wards and all the general surveillance magic, Tisana's job is the central element, provide the ultimate magnificent distraction.
The plan immediately starts to fracture. As they infiltrate the party, Max is dosed with Crixalis, a magic inhibitor.
Probably applied to the rim of his wineglass. He realizes his solary fire magic is almost useless. He can generate these tiny, weak flames, but his power has been neutralized.
Which leaves Tisana totally exposed, facing Azin Mikov as Maris's son, who is a perfect mirror of his dead father.
The same sneering power, the same possessive cruelty. Azin calls her a fragmented cunt, throwing her past and her greatest insecurities right in her face.
This confrontation, fueled by righteous rage and the memory of her own scars, pushes Tisana past the point of no return.
With Max neutralized, she knows she can't rely on conventional magic or her training.
So she throws herself fully into the performance, leaping onto the head table in this rage-fueled confrontation dance.
She knows the only way to avoid being possessed or destroyed again is to welcome the destructive power of the creature within. She screams for Riche.
This is the moment of total personal sacrifice. Fulfilling the terms of her blood pact, she fully wields Riche, but not by just letting it out.
No, she internalizes the creature. She literally swallows its core of power, its heart, that mass of magic and power and broken memories.
And the power that explodes out of her is just devastating and rotting. It manifests as this magnificent, untamed fire serpent that weaves through the air, burning and melting the very foundations of the estate.
The sources say the city itself begins to crack under the pressure of this raw, uncontrolled force. Tisana has bought freedom for her people with the annihilation of her own control.
And Max, seeing her loss to the creature, realizes that his Sarlazai failure is about to repeat itself.
Only this time, it's Tisana who is becoming the monster that destroyed him.
He has to fulfill the promise he made to himself to protect her from that fate.
So he uses the last vestiges of his strength and unleashes his full, long-suppressed power, the cold blue flames he got from Riche's previous forced removal, the very power he swore never to touch again.
This choice, it's not tactical, it's existential. He embraces the risk of death, knowing he has to stop her, even if it means killing her to prevent her ultimate moral demise.
His internal thought process is so clear, he refuses to allow her to have a tale with a bitter ending crafted from Riche's terrible acts.
The confrontation, amidst the destructive red and blue flames, culminates in Max embracing Tisana, locked in a silent kiss.
It's the ultimate moment of commitment. Even as he's being burned and struck down by Riche's power, Tisana hears Max's desperate, furious command inside her mind, penetrating the chaos.
You are not fucking done, Tisana, so get back here.
He uses the absolute strength of his will and his commitment to just yank her back from the brink of total absorption, forcing her to choose survival.
The immediate resolution confirms the mission was a success, but the personal cost is enormous.
Tisana survives, having successfully internalized Riche as a part of her own power. She now feels it moving in her blood. Max survives, severely injured, unconscious, but alive.
And critically, thanks to the Sirisan's silent magic, Cyrell and the enslaved are rescued and reunited with Tisana.
When Max finally recovers enough to speak, he confirms the depth of his commitment. He articulates why he risked everything for her.
He says he loves her for her strength, for her beautiful brute force, for seeing what no one else does.
I loved her for everything the world constantly used against her. I loved her for continuing anyway.
It is a final, definitive rejection of the Order's control, cemented by his love for the woman who sacrificed her freedom for his.
So the immediate aftermath leaves Tisana not just a wielder, but a host to this immense, chaotic power.
She is now the daughter of all worlds. She feels Riche moving in her blood, its voice now closer than ever, matching her own breath and heartbeat.
She has Cyrell back, she has power, but she knows their story is not complete.
She has the power she so desperately craved to become a liberator. But the central question remains terrifyingly open. Has she truly mastered the weapon?
Or has she simply become a more powerful, more terrifying version of the monster the Orders feared?
She admits, with a chilling lack of certainty, that she hasn't decided how the story should end.
And Riche, which now calls her name and tastes her anger, is just waiting for her decision.
And this is the central danger that's now looming over Max, and over the success of their whole plan. Zareth Aldris, the cold and calculating arch-commandant.
She's overjoyed by the success in Threll. She views Tisana's blood pact as the ultimate control mechanism.
Zareth realizes Nura was right all along. Nura said, if you have her, then you have him. It's just how he works.
Tizana successfully freed Max from the literal order contracts, but Zareth understands that those legal pacts are now completely irrelevant.
Max is bound by something far stronger and far more exploitable. His love for Tizana.
Zareth views Maxentius Farleon not as a person, but as a good investment, because she controls the person he loves most in the world.
The path to freedom was paved with betrayal, sacrifice in this monstrous blood pact. Tizana now possesses the immense power she craved to liberate her people, but the cost is profoundly personal and continuous.
She is tied to a force of chaos and vengeance, and the creature loves the man who destroyed it before.
So the ultimate provocative thought for you to carry forward is this. Tizana now fights for the freedom of others, but she carries a creature that feeds on rage and loves her protector, Max. Riche knows Max's every weakness and trauma from their shared past. So will Tizana's profound love for Max be her ultimate strength in controlling Riche and fulfilling her mission.
Or will Zareth, or even Riche itself, use that powerful connection as Tizana's final, most exploitable weakness? That is the dark, volatile future she has bought herself.